Hello, and welcome to the Woo is True podcast. I am your host, Dr. Nicole Garitano. I like to refer to myself as a recovering academic and healthcare provider, and I now help other people develop their intuition and really come to terms with this idea of science and spirituality. I am a lover of both evidence and divine coincidence. So let's see if you're in the right place. Are you someone who's ever wondered how spirituality and science fit together? Maybe you've questioned what you learned through traditional religion, or you've had experiences that you know have a deeper meaning and you just aren't sure how to figure those out. If so, the Woo is True is for you. In this podcast, I want to make the practical mystical and the mystical practical, because I know there's a way to balance the two and learn from both. It doesn't have to be either or, it can be both and. Both practical and spiritual, both science and energy, both concrete and ethereal. So let's swap or for and dive into the woo. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode where I will be speaking with Ixchel Alcantara. She is one of my clients, and she's going to share her unique perspective on intuition and how she has integrated this both into motherhood and her business. Ixchel is just a fabulous, gentle soul, and her passion is really helping female business owners harness the power of their money in their business. So if you'd like more information about Ixchel, be sure to check out the show notes. Otherwise, get ready to dive into our conversation. We will be talking all things intuition. And so I do know this is a topic that's near and dear to your heart. So I would just like to ask you first, what does intuition really mean to you?
Well, first of all, thank you, Nicole, for having me on the podcast and to answer your question. Well, to me, intuition is really kind of like that inner voice, that just inner knowing, that gut feeling inside of you that um, that really guides you for your highest good, like to
Mhm.
do, the best. Not the best per se, but just the best outcome for everybody involved. Um, And so sometimes it's a soft little voice sometimes, and you just kind of have to hone in, and it's always there. You just have to quiet yourself long enough in order to hear it. That's what
Yes,
intuition.
I love that. I love that definition. And you're right. Sometimes the voice can be so soft. And our hope is that as we fine tune our intuition, that voice gets louder and it's a voice that we know we can rely upon 100%. So that's just so beautiful the way you put that. The other thing I kind of want to ask you just right off the top as we jump in is how long have you personally been tuned into or developing your intuition?
I think I would say I first noticed it, like I got little pings here and there when I was about 7-ish. How sometimes like my parents had rented this apartment and they never took us to go see it. I just knew we were going to move into this new apartment. And I remember walking up the stairs, and it wasn't, you would think sometimes the level of energy just, it gets a little bit denser sometimes as you're going upstairs. I just felt that something was not necessarily right there. Um, so that's, I think, when it first started getting pings here and there of just things not necessarily like not being right, but just something else was there with me at the time. And it just kind of progressed. I remember it just ebbed and flowed because I wasn't necessarily working on it. It was just there and I was acknowledging it. And of course, like I've said, there have been instances where the little voice has been there, and I would get instances where I went, here, you really got to go do this right now. Like, it's important for you to do this one thing right now because it's critical. And of course, when I wouldn't do it, I would think, oh, I should have just listened to myself. Um, and it's funny because sometimes it would come from like outside. I knew it wasn't my voice per se. And sometimes it was just a feeling like I really need to move out of the way before something happens, type of deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. And so I'm really curious because when you said there were times that you could have listened and you didn't, and then there was like that sense of regret later. Can you remember a specific time that you did listen? And what was on the other side of that when you listened?
Um, well, let's see. There were instances where, like, I just because I'm gonna fast forward till I was older,
Okay.
and because this one's like really vivid. Um, I was at my husband's company picnic, or it wasn't even a company picnic. It was just a bunch of his coworkers getting together, and there was this particular coworker that I felt like, and this is not the first time I felt this way now that I think about it. As something told me, this is the last time you're going to see this person, or you're going to talk to this person, or you're going to have some sort of like interaction with this person. But I didn't quite understand, and I I said bye in a way that was like it didn't it like I had closure to a certain extent, right?
Mhm.
Not one of those vibes that okay, see you later. We're really in the moment. So I took time to be in the moment, and within 2 weeks, he passed away of a heart attack, and that was the
Mm.
last time I saw him. So, I mean, that's to an extreme, but there's been instances where I was at work and I knew I had a slew of things I needed to get done, and so you're trying to prioritize, right? And so you're sitting
Mhm.
there wondering, what do I need to get done? And there were instances where I like could feel or hear, you need to get this done because this is what's going to be asked of you next. And sure enough, when I got it done, it not only did it feel good to get it off my plate, within minutes or hours, my boss was asking me about whatever it was that she needed, and there it was.
Mm. Well, and you bring up like something so interesting because even when you're saying the first example seems extreme,
Mhm.
actually, in the moment when you were around that person, it probably felt like you were more in the mundane, like just the day to day. I'm at this event, I have to go do this. And yet you get that intuitive hit, and then you do see that that comes to fruition after the event. And
Yeah.
so I love that because I do feel that it's sometimes in the mundane where our intuition speaks to us the most clearly, if that makes sense. And just being in tune on any level, you start to find that the mundane really isn't as mundane as we once thought it was, that there's always something very interactive going on within our mind, body, and spirit, and that voice, that intuition that's speaking to us. So I really love that you use that as an example. Um, because I have found that, just in my own journey, that what I think is just the day to day mundane, so
Mhm.
many great things are coming through. Like there's so much more clarity and the information flows so much more smoothly by heightening that awareness on a daily basis. So, yeah, do you have anything else to say just about the mundane?
Well, yes, I agree with you what you're saying about the mundane, but I want to ask.
Tell me.
Maybe I'm in the mundane.
Can you tell me what that was?
I can't hear. That was kind of neighbor. What I wanted to add was it. Sometimes we think that our intuition gives us like you need to do this, but we don't necessarily always get the feedback right away. Like in both instances, one was
I
within.
want the power back now.
Okay, buddy, I can't get the power to work on right now. Okay, thank you.
He needed to be working
Yes, I know. Hey,
every
hey,
time.
shh. What am I doing? What am I doing right now?
In the meeting,
And
but
what
we
do you
need
need?
to
Okay,
keep that on.
I'm in a meeting right now. Shh. Go down there.
No, here.
Okay, be real quiet. Okay, shh. Don't fight. Shh. Um, you never know when you're gonna get that feedback. Um, it could be a week, 2 weeks, an hour, a minute, and it doesn't matter. If you just like you build up that muscle to learn to trust your instinct or
Hmm.
your intuition, and you don't need instant like in the world that we live in, instant like gratification where you know right away what it is. And sometimes
Hmm.
you just need to trust.
Yes, yes, I love that. And also, like this also makes me want to ask you, because our listeners, I know, so
Mhm.
Ixchel has her son with her, and many people in my world, like we have our kids right by our sides as we're doing our work, as we're doing everything. So I'd love for you to even share, was it your intuition? Was there an instinctual feeling that made you know you wanted to be able to work and still have your child right there with you?
Well, yeah, this all goes back to, I think, when after I had him, I had a choice right there and then. Um, do I want to go back to work or do I want to stay at home? And this is when he was just a couple of months old, and I chose to stay at home. I took a break, and then I knew I had to go back, and I had to do it on my own terms because I needed that flexibility. And I know in a way it seems like you're making it harder on yourself, but I feel like I'm also giving him the example of you can do both things. And especially being a female, I'm opening up his eyes to it's not just an opportunity that should be held by just males. It should be open to both, right? And if he so chooses to pursue a career like in corporate, that's fine. And if he so chooses to do a business, that's okay. He has it in his power to make that choice and that freedom. And the same thing with schooling. Like right now, we had COVID. So he got so used to him being schooled by me. And he tells me all the time, Mommy, I don't want to necessarily be schooled at school. So not considering, I am going to be doing homeschooling and let's see how that goes. Right.
Mhm.
Um, I'm trying to tap into my intuition to do what's best for both parties and my family as a whole. And just having that extra tool in my toolbox definitely makes that balance much more manageable. Like I don't feel guilty with him being here because I
Yeah.
know it's in, you know.
Yes. Yeah, and I feel like even as we're doing this, since I'm always leaning into my intuition as I'm speaking to people, I feel like there's going to be listeners out there that need to hear like that motherly intuition is so important to honor and to be tuned into. So many times our society has taught us to like be out in the workplace, right? To achieve these certain success marks. We're almost checking things off a list. And that motherly intuition and the idea of being able to be both, right? It's both and not either or. And
Hmm.
so it's beautiful, the role modeling that you're doing for him. And even what I was feeling as you were saying that is what you're showing him is possible for women, right?
Hmm.
His view of what women can accomplish will look so much different than it may have had you chosen more traditional routes. So that just felt really important to highlight. I feel like we're going to have some listeners that are like, oh, that really speaks to me right now, because especially for women, we are in that tension when we
Hmm.
have children. You may not have children, you may have pets, and you just want to be able to work at home, to be
Yeah.
with your pets because they're like your children too. And so, like, following those nudges when we're getting them is so important. And that's a beautiful example of how you did that. But you just said it's like an evolving, continuing process of you tapping into your intuition and like fine tuning what's best for your family. So that's really, really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. I think also to add to that, it was really critical for me. Both my parents and my husband's parents on both sides, they're aging. And
Hmm.
so I'm gonna end up in a situation, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of people my age and other ages feel this way, where they're sometimes stuck between a hard and a rock place where they're trying to balance career, motherhood, and being a caretaker, right? And so I just I felt that it was in our like best interest as a family unit for me to be here in case there was an emergency. Because of course my in-laws aren't, their health is not that great, but then you never know when something's gonna happen, right? So just having that flexibility was really, I felt that was the best thing for us.
Yes. And even as you're saying that, it's making me like the whole word superpower, right, is coming up because our intuition in so many ways really is our superpower in our personal life and our professional life, the way we blend those together, and every other tiny facet of our lives because we're so complex and there's so much going on in the world right now. So, for you, like, what do you feel like is your intuitive superpower or the way that your gifting comes through?
It comes in multiple ways. Sometimes it comes in dreams that are like really like, I think my dreams come in when I'm not 100% or I'm too, not dysregulated, but I'm all over the place. Like there's just so much going on in my life and I can't seem to quiet myself down during the day to listen. So sometimes my dreams are very vivid and very almost metaphorically, but almost to the T. Um, and then there's what I was saying earlier, like sometimes I'll hear a voice outside of me telling me, Michelle, you need to do this right this minute. And probably my not so developed one is, well, I can't even say that. I just don't think I've used it as much or I've had to. Is sometimes I'll go into a spot, like a place, and it'll just, if it feels like the energy is not necessarily like right, like something's off. And I think I had alluded to that earlier. So I think those are the three things. So after taking your course and just really tapping back into through journaling and connecting with nature, I the voice got louder again because I had, it's like you have moments in life where not that you forget about it, but you're just not doing the work to make sure that the connection is not the connection, that you're listening. It's not it's that you're being, that you're listening. And so I think it got to the point where I started like smelling and tasting to a certain extent. So those
Mhm.
were starting to develop as well. Um, but I think the one that has been tremendously consistent has been the voice and the dreams for me.
Mm, I love it. And I know, like, even when we first started working together, dreams were definitely a way you'd been connecting for a long time. It sounded like from some of the things you shared early on with me. So it's amazing to hear like the progression. I feel like so many times people think, well, like you either have intuition or you don't. And we all have intuition. And
Yeah.
at the same time, it is like a skill, a superpower that we're constantly developing. And there's so many different directions that it can go as we fine tune the gifts that are coming really naturally to us. So I love the way you piece that together as you were explaining it. And yeah, especially with you being like a graduate of the Balance Being Intuitive Formula program, I would love for you maybe just to share like what were some of the highlights of going through the program that you really enjoyed?
Honestly, from someone that like has been, because you're gonna have different people coming into the course and that are interested in it, right? So someone that has always had that feeling like my intuition is already somewhat developed, or I've previously worked on developing it, or I feel really connected and you don't feel as I don't want to use the word shame, but right now, for lack of a better word, I'm going to use it. Of even acknowledging that you have that skill, even though we all do, we just kind of hide it. Because I know I did it for a while there. I think that just I had I had a moment where I felt like I wasn't discerning what was being told. So just finding my own confidence and just knowing that I'm not always going to get it right, right? And it's just a matter of trusting and listening and writing things down as they come, or even doing a voice message for myself and validating, having those validations to show me that it's not that I'm not discerning, it's just that maybe I wasn't listening, or finding little things that, because intuition has a funny way of talking to you sometimes, it's very symbolic. And so you really being confident and understanding, it's almost like you're as I was taking the course, I felt much more confident in the symbolic way that I spoke and interacted with my own intuition. So that became a much more stronger, much more defined, and the discernment part, that fear, was no longer there. So there's definitely a huge boost in confidence when it comes to that. And just connecting and having that community and having you as a like guide and support, knowing that I'm not just being thrown out there into the masses and wondering where I'm going. Having that community, it just felt really good, and it's really critical and important. I think that as you're beginning to reconnect with that part of you, that you do it in a way that it's not traumatic, it's safe, and that you're dealing with stuff that you need to deal with as well, because there's certain things that you still have that you need to declutter to keep that communication or those channels open. That's speaking from perspective of someone that has worked on my intuition throughout my life. And I would say, and this is just from a viewpoint from that perspective to maybe the perspective of someone that lived in this style of, I know I have this, but I don't know how to incorporate it into my life, or if it's even something that's like okay, or because sometimes it's taboo. I think taking your class, you have this like beautiful presence about you, where you make space for people to get to where they need to be when they need to get there at their own time. And that is just so critical when we're working on our intuition, because our intuition is also part of who we are. We're all connected, right? And so we'll reconnect when we're ready. And so you do such a beautiful job at holding us and holding our space to do that in a very non-scary, non-fear based way, where we gradually reconnect with who we are. We feel more confident, and we can trust what our intuition is telling us, because it's there for our highest good and for the highest good of the world.
Mm, I love that. And thank you for those beautiful reflections back. I accept them, I feel them. Um, and I love that you brought some of those elements up because, like, for me as a guide, it is such an intentional process of setting up these smaller, more intimate containers where people can, like you put it beautifully, rediscover themselves in a really safe environment. And
Mhm.
I don't believe in like the pushing. It's a nurturing environment because people are there to go at their own pace and
Mhm.
different content will land when it's meant to land. And that's why people get lifetime access to it because I know from my own journey, and you've described elements of this too with your long term journey. The information comes when we're ready to receive it. We learn the process when we're ready to learn it. And so, even in 6 weeks, we hope to take some steps. And I
Right.
also know, being realistic, that some people are not going to be ready for all of that content all in one fell swoop. And so knowing that there's that flexibility to come back in and receive the content at a time that feels in alignment, for anyone joining the container was really, really important to me. Um, and so, with every new round, for those listening, you're invited back in every time I offer it again for that same support at no charge, because I feel like this is a lifelong process. Like we've said, developing
Mhm.
our intuition isn't a one and done. It goes on, it continues. And so I want to make sure anything I create is accessible to anyone that feels called to be a part of it for the long haul. I'm really here to support people for the long haul. So I appreciate, like, you noticing those elements of what I've so intentionally tried to create and have created within my communities. So I am choosing to do things a little bit different and not so much inside the conventional mainstream. And it's working beautifully for me and for those who are called to, be on this path, be on this journey with me. So, with that being said, I would love to know, like, if you had to sum up your experience in 3 to 5 words of being inside the intuitive formula experience.
Hmm.
How would you sum that up?
Wow. I would say like I think intuitive nurturing connection. And what I mean by that is in so many facets. I intuitively connected to you and trusted you because I knew you were going to nurture me. Like you were going to set up that nurturing space without it coming from a space of me, from just my growth, right? You make sure that you are open and you hold space for every person, no matter where they are in their growth, right? In their journey. And I definitely felt empowered by not just your presence as a guide, as a teacher, um, but also the community there. Like as we were participating on a weekly basis, just seeing everybody's journey from a different perspective. And at the end of that 6 week, having the opportunity to connect with each other in a way where we not tested, but we used like the skills that we were developing to connect with each other in a way that we maybe hadn't. And that I've always loved doing that. So, and also intuitive in my own sense, not just as the community, but from a personal level, it just me connecting with you was there. That was like not even discernment, but it was like, okay, this is good, right? I'm not that off base. So yes. And
Yes.
I think just, honestly, Nicole, um, not just because I'm your student, but I'm being honest here. You're being led to do things differently because you're meant to be a leader in this space. And I cannot wait for you to see just the huge impact that you're going to make in this world, not just through the work that you're doing here, but by holding space for other people to go ahead and allow it and grow in their journey in this way and the impact that they're going to make on their community as well.
Oh, thank you. Bringing tears to my eyes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That just, oh, it touches my heart and makes me feel just like so joyful inside because it is something I feel so called to do and so passionate about. So thank you for reflecting that back to me. And oh, before we wrap up, I would love to ask you, just so all of our listeners can hear, um, what are your next intuitive steps, or where do you see your intuition taking you next? How are you incorporating it?
Uh, well, I mean, I mentioned that I'm a business owner, so definitely growing that in a sense where I see how in the online space we're all about the next 10K, the next 20K, and we're building up all these money goals, but there is no it feels like a hamster wheel. You're just going to the next goal, but there's no intent. There's no intent behind it. And I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs, like we all came, I shouldn't say we all, a lot of the people in the online space that I'm around are moms. And they have a deeper passion than just being moms. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that because we mentioned that it's not just this or that, it's both, right? And I feel like just helping them and supporting them in a way where they create something that's like strategy and financial goals that are not rigid and they're more flexible, but they have more impactful goals than profitable goals at the end of the day, is necessarily where I'm being led to. But there's something else that's coming up, and it's in the realm of intuition too. I don't think I'm meant to do just this like really logical, structured way of doing things. I will infuse some of my intuition in there.
I did it. Today I dropped the apple.
Okay, buddy.
Finally.
Good job. But there's also so I'm Reiki certified, and I throughout our program I had actually gotten some tools to work with Reiki. And last week one of my old coworkers called me and asked me out of the blue if I was doing Reiki, and I think it's time. I think it's time that I start doing that as well, and just helping that way as well.
Yes,
As far
I
as
love it.
as far as parenthood is concerned, like just playing it year by one day at a time with the whole homeschooling thing. I'm not 100% sure if
She said I got a superstar.
Mhm. I'm not 100% sure I will be homeschooling when he's like in fifth or sixth or seventh grade, but just giving him those foundations right now, I think is where he needs to be and where I need to be as a whole. And then every year we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I love it. Well, you have the whole plan. Like you're going to keep checking back in with your intuition and taking those aligned action steps. Like, really, even in your voice, it's from this place of radical self trust, which is
Mhm.
so important and foundational to doing the intuitive work. So, I'm so excited to see where you go next. I feel so blessed and lucky that we have this connection. It is like a soul connection. We were definitely meant to meet, and so grateful to have you in my community. And just the fact that you came on today and shared your experience, it's not just going to help, one or two people. It does have that ripple effect. And I know there's listeners that needed to hear this message today and your unique perspective on intuition. So thank you for being with me. Thank you for sharing. Any last parting words or advice?
Just sometimes as moms you hear the word self-care and we think that it's superficial. By superficial, I mean you're doing outside things to work on inside. And we forget that it's really self-care for our own soul, our own intuition that is important. And doing this work, like connecting with ourselves, taking time to journal, taking time to even just step outside. Like I love the fact that you said if you can't step outside into nature because little Jude, my son, is having a day, you can always look out the window and just experience the wind. Just open the window and experience the wind. Breathe in the air. Like really feel yourself in the moment. That is like the cheapest and that is not expensive, but also the easiest and quickest way of getting self-care within a couple minutes. And you're not just filling your cup, you're also connecting with your own intuition as to what it's telling you that you need at that moment, not only to keep yourself sane, but to help your kids and and overall just everything that we as moms, as women, because not just moms, as women, we're responsible for. Because let's be honest, there's women here who may be listening to your program that may not have children, or they have pets, or they don't have pets, but they also have parents, and they're also sometimes caretakers, and they worry. We're raised to be nurturers by nature, or not by nature, by society, and by nature we kind of are nurturers. And so I think that it's so critical for us to give ourselves back in order to find that confidence and that strength, and not
Yes.
be all over the place wondering what's my next best step is, because the answer's always inside of you.
Mm-hmm. Those are the perfect wise words to end on. The answers are always inside of you. Once you can lean into that and trust that, even the obstacles just start to feel like a bump in the road. So
Right.
thank you so much for being here. I have loved this conversation, and we'll definitely have to do it again sometime.
Thank you so much for having me. I just love talking to you and just thank you.
Yes. Uh-huh. Thanks for filling your ears with possibility today. You can find all the resources shared in today's episode in the show notes or description, depending on which platform you are tuning in from. Until next time, remember your understanding starts inside of you. So stay true to your woo.